Hello, everybody, and welcome to Monday Night Travel with Rick Steves Europe. My name is Gabe Gunning, and I have the privilege of joining you all as your moderator this evening as we travel through across the lakes and mountains of northern Italy with a very special guest. Now, without further ado, it is my distinct privilege to welcome our very special guest for the day, Patricia Fannon. Patricia, welcome to Monday Night Travel.
Thank you, Gabe. Welcome. And thank you for having me.
Of course. Patricia, where are you joining us from and what time is it?
Hi, Gabe. I am in Riva del Garda, which is in Lake Garda, Northern Italy. It is 4:03 in the morning. 4:03 in the morning.
And I understand, Patricia, that not only are you tired because it's the middle of the night, but you've had a busy week. What have you been up to recently?
Well, I have just finished actually this morning a great tour, which was the heart of Italy, which is one of my favorites. It's short and sweet. It starts in Rome. It goes to Volterra in Tuscany, Monte Rosso Cinque Terre, and I finished this morning in Florence.
You finished this morning? Well, I guess
I
yesterday
finished
morning
at
for
10
you.
o'clock this morning. I had a great group. We had really nice, fun people, great weather. Food was just a bit too good.
And Patricia, I detect a bit of an accent, but not an Italian accent. Can you tell us where it is you grew up and how you ended up in the Italian Lakes District?
Well, Gabe, I'm originally from Scotland, as you can hear, and I've been in Italy over 20 years now. I worked all over the world for many years. Then at some stage I was here in Italy and I eventually settled down and I had a family and I thought this is a great place to raise a family.
Hmm.
You know, I'm a few hours from everywhere. It's a great environment to raise kids. So this is a good place to be.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to hearing more about your love of the Italian lakes, and we'll also get up to the Dolomites later in tonight's presentation. But one thing I want to start with is oftentimes our Monday night travelers have some similar questions for various destinations. What's the best time to go? How long should we stay there? How should we get around? So I'd like to begin with a quick at a glance of the Italian lakes, just with some fast facts for people that might be planning a trip there soon. So let's take a look. So Patricia, when we talk about the Italian Lakes District, how many lakes are we talking about?
There are many lakes. There's probably a few hundred, but most of them in America you would describe as ponds. But when we talk about the big players, we talk about Como, Maggiore, Garda, Lugana, and Orta. Orta's tiny, but it's it's competing with the big people.
And you told me that there's quite a long range of time that can be ideal to visit the lakes. But when you and I were chatting, you said that May through September, there's a lot of great music, concerts in the castles, or a lot of street performances. What do you like about that time of year in the Lakes District?
Well, May to September, it's spring, it's summer, right through to October sometimes as well. You know, the weather's glorious, people are swimming in the lakes, there's music, they're dining al fresco in the streets, there's music in corners. You know, Stresa, for example, has its music festival, Garda has its music festival as well, Como. It's just a whole spring, summer feel about the lakes.
And in terms of getting around, can people get around fairly well just by public transportation or taxi? Or should people consider renting a car?
Well, you know, you rent a car, you've got to worry about parking, you've got to worry about reading the parking signs, you're in a foreign country, and you don't have as much fun. Whereas, especially in Lake Como has a brilliant connection of ferries. Maggiore also has a good connection. Guard is a little bit bigger, but if you combine maybe the odd taxi, maybe ferry transport and trains, you can easily get around the Lake District. A lot of patience cappuccino, glass of wine, easy to do.
And in terms of length of stay, you kind of recommend dividing time fairly evenly between the three big lakes, Como, Maggiore, and Garda, with about 2 nights, maybe a third thrown in. I noticed you threw in a third in your home lake of Lake Garda. But do you think about a week is reasonable for the Italian Lakes District?
I think if you're in a hurry, a week is reasonable. But because I know you Americans don't get much vacation time. But
Uh,
if you have a bit more time, you could easily spend a lot longer because it's not only on the lakes, there's other things nearby like Mantova, Trento, there's Merano. There's so much to see around the lake districts.
And Patricia, one question that we often get is how to manage money and pay for things while in Europe. And I know that a lot of parts of Europe, like Scandinavia, are going very cashless. But my understanding is that the Italians still kind of like cash a bit more. What is your advice to travelers going to Italy in terms of payments?
My advice is always keep, Gabe, always keep some cash on you because really, if you're paying for a gelato is what, €2.50 here in the lakes? 2 gelatos is €5. An Aperol Spritz is €5. It's €10. The person with the small business gets the cash right away rather than waiting 2 or 3 months to get it from a bank. So I always like to keep some cash because sometimes the links are down with banks and I find that cash gets me discounts. Cash gets me bigger smiles as well.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned the price for 2 gelatos because I never get just one. So just pay with the €5 bill, and you get two flavors. All right. Well, thank you, Patricia, for sharing some of those fast facts with us. We're now going to dive into the Lakes District and get to see its beauty and hear more from you. But first, I would like to start with Rick on his favorite lake in the Lakes District, Lake Como. So we're going to join Rick on Lake Como now.
Lombardy's seductively beautiful Lakes District, where Italy meets the Alps, seems heaven sent for communing with nature. In this land of so many popular lakes, the million-euro question is, which one? Well, all the lakes have their charms. Lake Como is my favorite. It offers the best mix of accessibility, scenery, and offbeatness, with a heady whiff of aristocratic old days romance.
So, Patricia, would you say that Lake Como is the most touristed of all the lakes? And if so, does it feel touristy or does it still feel like it retains some of its kind of authentic charm?
Well, Gabe, Lake Como, it's probably the most visited at the moment. But it never feels overrun with people. That's the amazing thing about Como. It's got a great network of ferries. It's got beautiful villas. Sometimes you find a lot of people at Villa Carlotta or the Villa Balbionello, where they filmed, the marriage between Padme and Anakin Skywalker, Ocean's 11. And they film a lot of movies, but Lake Como never feels overdone.
Excellent. Well, let's experience some of its beauty along with Rick right now.
Lake Como is lined with elegant 19th century villas, crowned by snow-capped mountains and busy with fleets of little ferries. It's a good place to take a break from the intensity of urban turnstile sightseeing. It seems half the travelers you'll meet have tossed their itineraries into the lake and are actually relaxing. Today, the hazy, lazy lake's only serious industry is tourism. Lake Como's isolation and flat economy have left it pretty much the way 19th century Romantic poets first described it. Bellagio, the self-proclaimed pearl of the lake, is a classy combination of old-world elegance and new-world luxury. Spendy five-star hotels give the well-heeled traveler all the comforts they're accustomed to. Harborfront shops entice posh travelers with jewelry and accessories. The heavy curtains between the arcades keep the visitors and their poodles from sweating. The steep lanes rising from the harbor front lead to a tangle of sun-splashed squares. Part of the fun of your lake visit is town hopping on the ferries. For me, the ideal home base for Lago di Como is 15 minutes from Bellagio, Varenna. This town of 800 people offers the best of all lake worlds. Easily accessible by train from Milan, yet on the less developed side of the lake, Varenna has a romantic promenade, a tiny harbor, and narrow lanes. These buildings are stringently protected. You can't even change the color of your home without asking permission. There are no streets in the old town, just characteristic stepped lanes. It's an ideal place to savor a lakeside cappuccino or aperitivo.
So speaking of aperitivos, Patricia, I understand that you have a little regional feast compiled for us. Can you share with us what you're eating and drinking tonight?
Well, for breakfast, I'm having some, let me see, can you see this?
Yes.
I'm having puzzoni, and puzzo means smelly, the stinky one. This is a cheese, puzzoni.
So the name literally means stinky?
It means stinky from Moena, puzzoni di Moena. And
Rick would love that.
They bathe the cheese in water for about 9-10 months just so it gets really smelly. And then I have some cacciota with herbs, which is a little bit lighter. I have some mostarda, which is a mustard made with raspberries and balsamic vinegar. It's divine.
I've never heard of a mustard that has fruit in it before.
It comes from the Dolomites, and I have some speck. Speck is a cured ham. It's aged in juniper berries and rosemary. And then I am washing it all down with some apple juice. I have Pinova, which is sweet and tart at the same time. And I have a red apple juice. And these are gourmet apple juices. Remember, every second apple you eat in Italy comes from Trentino Alto Adige.
And is that like hard cider apple juice, or is that just juice?
It's non-alcoholic. We have a whole selection. It's all pure apples. Then I have Tiroldigo, a local wine. The Tiroldigo, it's a lovely red from Trentino. And it's ideal with speck. It's ideal with a beef bourguignon. It's just a nice wine. And of course, I have some apple strudel. Apple strudel.
That looks so good.
Cinnamon, raisins, pine nuts, yum, yum.
So you in the Lakes District and Lake Garda area are just like us in Washington, apple capitals of our countries.
That's right. We're the apple capital. We have Alto Adige, which is one of the names for South Tyrol, they have about 18 to 20 soccer fields just of apples. So probably the two regions together, you're looking around 25 soccer fields of apples.
Oh, wow.
That's a lot of apples.
That's a lot of apples. All right. Well, you enjoy your feast, and we are going to continue along Lake Como with Rick.
Thank you.
Imagine this sleepy harbor 200 years ago. It was busy. There were coopers crafting oak and chestnut into barrels, stoneworkers carving and shipping Varenna's prized black marble, and fishing boats dragged up onto this cobbled beach. Many Lake Como towns have a villa or two with their dilapidated 19th century elegance and wistful gardens open to the public and even transformed into inviting hotels. In Varenna, the sprawling lakeside Villa Cipresi rents rooms and welcomes visitors for a small fee to explore its peaceful terraced garden. Albergo Milano, located right in the old town, is the kind of place I like to recommend in my guidebooks. It's graciously run by Egidio and his Swiss wife, Bettina. fusing the best of Italy with the best of Switzerland, the place manages to be both romantic and very well run. Most of its comfy rooms offer dreamy lake views. And Egidio is a fine chef. The limited menu changes daily according to the season and the chef's whim. Varenna whispers Luna di Mille, honeymoon, and a good place to enjoy that romance is strolling along its passerella. You'll pass wisteria-drenched villas, evocative vistas, and lakeside lovers embracing the moment. It's places like this where I really feel the romance of Europe. I hope you've enjoyed our look at Milano and Lago di Como. I'm Rick Steves. Until next time, keep on traveling. Ciao.
All right, Patricia. So we saw Rick talk about the ferries going across the lakes, and I know that our Monday Night Travel viewers always enjoy some up-to-date videos from the road. Often those come from Rick, but tonight we actually have a video from one of my colleagues at the Rick Steves Europe office and one of your colleagues as a Rick Steves Europe tour guide, Colleen, who works in our tour operations department and is a guide. And Colleen was just in Como, Lake Como last month, and we have a little update from Colleen taking the ferry across Lake Como.
Hi everybody, this is Colleen Schaefer. I'm a tour guide with Rick Steves, and today we are on Lake Como. It's September 12th, 2022, and I am on a ferry. I'm going to spend the day exploring the Mid-Lakes area. I bought a pass, it was €15, and we home base in Varenna, and this pass is going to allow me to stop in Bellagio, Villa Carlotta, Leno, all the areas of the Mid-Lake area, being able to hop on and hop off the ferry and explore all the beautiful villas and towns that Lake Como has to offer. Now, one thing that's a little bit different since the pandemic is that even though I am on a ferry and it's open air, masks are required. So we are docked in Bellagio, people are getting back onto the boat, and I'm going to put on my mascarina and continue on my way exploring the lakes. I'll be back later to share more information with you. Ciao tutti, buona giornata.
So, Patricia, I know that Italy was kind of the first epicenter of the pandemic in Europe. Have you found that because of that, Italy has been a bit more conservative with their pandemic restrictions than other European countries? And what is the state of the restrictions now?
Well, Gabe, yes, Italy has been more cautious because the country was hit really hard. The laws on wearing the masks have just relaxed. Just over 7 days ago, it is no longer compulsory to wear the mask on public transport, but people are still doing so. I took just the high-speed train yesterday. I found a few people in the compartment wearing masks. I took the ferry. There were still people wearing masks, but it's not compulsory.
Well, now that we're about to be hopping on the ferry, I know that you shared, you're going to share with us some videos of kind of just glissading across the surface of the water in the Italian Lakes District. So we are going to do that now. So all of you at home, if you've had a long day, if it's been stressful, this is your chance to take a deep breath, and this is your moment of Zen, just gliding across the lakes in Italy. Here we go. So Patricia, what are these boats here? I mean, they look like sailboats to me, but like very tiny, tiny sailboats.
They are tiny. They're the Ikla, which are a laser class sailboat. It's they're used mainly by, I say, boys who are 13 to 15 years old.
Mm.
Usually they are great for sailors who weigh no more than 130, 140 pounds. Yeah,
And
that's
so
all.
has
That's 65 kilos.
your son done any sailing?
Well, I live in Riva del Garda, and of course, I'm on the lakefront. I'm 5 minutes walking from the lakefront from the yacht club, and sailing here is accessible for all the families. Of course, you have 29ers, more expensive boats, but a laser boat and the cost for sailing are affordable, accessible for most families on Lake Garda, and it keeps the kids busy at the weekend. So,
Hmm.
yeah, my son does. He sails. He sells lasers.
Interesting. I've never thought of I feel like in the United States, sailing is usually considered kind of a very upper class exclusive sport. So it's interesting to hear that it's relatively accessible in Lake Garda. And does your son do races?
He does. And you would be surprised, Gabe. I'm not going to drop any names, but some of these kids who are European champions, they come from very humble backgrounds. Their parents are normal working class people. So it's accessible for everyone. Of course, there are more expensive boats and you need to have a lot of money, but the laser and
Hmm.
also being in Trentino, it's supported economically by the region. We're an autonomous region, so we're self-governed, which means our region can give money to youth sports like sailing, windsurfing, canoeing, soccer. The region gives a lot of money.
Well, I like the image of, a lot of American parents, go and pick their kids up from soccer practice. I like the image of you just strolling 5 minutes down to the lakefront and your son just sailing in, picking them up to take them home. So, yeah, it sounds very idyllic.
It is. They start sailing at some of the kids start 6 years old in
Wow.
Optimist boats. And as I said, if somebody coming here on vacation, there's sailing classes for the kids, there's for adults, there's surfing, there's everything. And they burn off some energy. They're happy at the end of the day.
Well, we are going to enjoy a final few moments of sailing with them, and then we're afterwards going to see a clip of a different mode of transportation.
Right. Stay there. I'm taking over, Vanessa. Let me go past you. Come here. Stay in. I want to ride my bike. I want to ride my bicycle. I want to ride it now.
So, Patricia, first of all, who is the beautiful singer um, biking along with you? And can you tell us about this beautiful bike path?
This is Vanessa Nichols. She's a Scots-Italian tour leader with Rick Steves. And she came to visit me last year and we did some hiking in the Dolomites. And of course, this cycle path, the bike path, is a path that it's taken many years in doing because it is actually over the lake. So the path is coming out on the exterior of the tunnel you can see ahead of you, and it's going around the lake. And eventually it's going to go all the way into Riva del Garda, where we have a path that links to Torboli and eventually down to Malchesney. But there's a lot of tests. The geologists must be sure the rock can take the weight of the path.
So eventually it could go all the way around the lake?
Eventually, CNN called it the most beautiful bike lane in Italy.
Wow. Wow. And how many miles around is the lake?
The lake roughly is about 100 miles round. Garda is the biggest of the Italian lakes.
Wow. Well,
So
that would be a beautiful bike trip to do someday. So hopefully they'll continue to work on it. All
So it's
right.
Easy. It's a nice path. This is in the winter. In the summer, that bike lane's a bit busier. But in the winter, there's no one on it.
And is biking pretty accessible for tourists as well? Are there good places to rent bikes?
You're looking about 10, 15 euros a day if you want to rent a city bike. In these old towns, I tend to go everywhere on my bike. Riva is fairly flat, but if you want an e-bike, it costs you a bit more. If you can see the mountains on either side, if you want to do some of the more difficult trails going over big stones, then get an e-bike. But if you're simple like me, you like to stay in the flat, you want to call into the odd vineyard, visit the odd castle, stop here, stop there, regular city bike, 15, 20 euros, and you can cycle for maybe 15, 20 miles, you can stop. You can go as far or as close as you want to be.
Well, let's enjoy this final few moments on the most beautiful bike path in the world. All right. So, Patricia, we got a really good taste of Lake Como along with Rick, but that bike path and some of the sailboats that we saw, as you've already mentioned, are on Lake Garda, your home lake, if you will. And I would love to ask you to take us on a little tour of your home lake and maybe a few other lakes that might interest people. So I understand that you have some photos for us, so let me get those pulled up. And I would love it if you would take us on a little tour of Lake Garda.
This is the Ponali Trail. It's a route that was made during World War I when there was fierce fighting between the Italians and the Austrians in this area. And this is a hike. It's a lovely hike, best done in the afternoon because the sun isn't shining on it. But halfway up, there's a lovely bar where you can stop and either get a beer, a soft drink. You can either get a drink on the way up or the way down. And it connects to Lake Ledro. And some people have a bike van that picks them up and takes them up to Lake Ledro and they bike back down through here. But some people are normal. They just go for a nice stroll and the viewpoints are breathtaking. Well, these are some people who've traveled with me quite a bit, good friends of mine. We have Tim and Lou down there from California, and they've been in southern Italy with me. And we did Village Italy just a few weeks ago, and they spent a few days here. They spent some time in Garda and Verona before starting the Village Italy tour. And this is our beach where anybody can go sit at the beach. Locals bring their sandwiches. The kids swim in the lake. There's a lifeguard. And it's just an inexpensive, nice day for families. Little fishing port. We have many of these around the lakes. Malcesine, Brinzoni, Torbole. These little fishing boats, you know.
And Patricia, I know that you already showed us the laser boats, but they're just so beautiful, just kind of fluttering across the water that I couldn't help but add some more of the photos that you sent along.
They're the Opti boats. The Opti kids are even younger. I mean, they're tiny. You see these little kids about 6 years old pulling their boat and getting it in the water. And Easter time is when we have the biggest event here for sailing. Bastioni, it's a fortress. And we've just recently constructed a funicular to take you up there. But it was much larger. It's now a bar. And it was heavily bombed. I think it was Napoleon or Vendôme bombed it. So that's all that's left of the original fortress. And behind it, you have the path goes all the way up the mountain for those who really are ninja hikers.
Wait, I'm sorry, did you say that it's a bar now?
It's a bar. It's a lovely bar. And you have the most amazing view of the whole of the lake. But you can walk up or you can take the funicular.
And so are there people that walk up, have a few drinks at the bar, and then just kind of tumble down?
There's people who go up to the bar, have a few drinks, and take the funicular down. And some people go, and some go all the way up to Santa Barbara, even further, where there's a little lodge run by volunteers, and you can get a meal for about maybe 15, 20 euros. Now you need to be a serious hiker and mega fit for that, but it can be done in a few hours.
Those might be the people that just stick with the apple juice at the bar.
Definitely. Don't want to be drinking coming down there. We are on the outskirts of Limoni here.
Oh, that's a word that I recognize. I don't speak much Italian, but I recognize limone.
Limoni, they sure did produce a lot of lemons in the past. But nowadays, most of the lemon groves are no longer used. And here's the harbor in Limoni. You can just catch a view of the lemon groves behind you there. The word Limoni actually means limos, border. It's the border between Lombardy and Trentino. And this is a lemon grove. Okay, you see it? The wood would run horizontally. In its day, it was the most northerly point in Europe where lemons were produced, even supplying the Tsar of Russia with lemons.
Huh.
And D.H. Lawrence stayed here. We have a nice street in Limoni. You have some lemon plants. And the Bougainvillea is the beautiful purple plant you can see.
Wow, I just love that you can just go and buy a lemon plant. I would love to have a lemon plant in my backyard. This
is the island of Garda. And the island belongs to the Borghese Cavazza family.
Oh, the Borghese Gallery?
Yes, I believe they're related. But the Cavazza family, it's a large family, 7 of them. And the Countess has opened up this beautiful villa on the island. You originally had a Franciscan monastery. And this villa is neo-Gothic, so it's 1900s, and beautiful gardens, beautiful frescoes. They do weddings, they do tours there, they do events, everything. If you're coming to this part of the lake, a must-do is visit this island. But it has to be reserved. Must be reserved.
And is there like a ferry that goes to the island?
There is. There's a boat which leads from Gardoni, Minerva, and I think there's even one goes from Garda. But when you reserve it, they tell you where you can get the boat to the island. It's all included. Now, I think everybody recognized this lady. This is Lisa Friend.
Lisa Friend. Oh, we miss her.
Lisa's in one of the most interesting villas on Lake Garda. It's the Villa Feltrinelli. And the Feltrinellis were a family who made their fortune in the lumberjack business, hence all the wood. But during the Second World War, remember, this is after the Allies landed in the south, Hitler poured soldiers into the north, arranged for Mussolini to be rescued, and he set Mussolini up here in a little town named Salò as the puppet dictator of the Salò Republic. And the war raged on for another 2 years. Now, the villa after the Second World War was ignored. This is where the 10th Mountain Division came, just about one day after Mussolini had left it. And of course, the villa was abandoned. An American university bought it, and they used it as a dorm and summer camp for their students, but now it's a luxury hotel.
Wow, that would be a beautiful dorm to live in. Just a couple steps up from my old dorm room.
The Grotto di Catulo, if you need a little archaeology, this is in Sirmione. It's about a 15-20-minute walk from the center. So you need to allow yourself time. And it's a huge archaeological site named after Catulo, who was a Roman poet, but he came from Verona. Verona was part of Rome, so he was a Roman poet. And the archaeological site, it probably never belonged to him, but we have trees there, olive trees, which are several hundred years old. There's bathhouses. We really don't know that much about it. But it's an interesting archaeological site from the 1st century of the Roman period. And this is Ponto San Vigilio, another noble family residence. I think it's the Count of Brenzoni's, who hailed from Verona, but it's had special guests such as the British royal family, Charles, Diana, Winston Churchill. and it's got a wonderful restaurant nowadays. But you
Oh,
must
wow.
reserve.
That is quite the guest list.
You must reserve, and you come along in your little boat and have a nice lunch. This is one of my favorites. This is Suora Veronica. And Suora Veronica dates from 1920, roughly. And it was a cargo ship because we had no road, or no decent road. So the ship would go from Riva to Desenzano, which is about, let me think, 32.5 miles. And it would take animals, oil, wine. So it was going from Austria to Italy.
Hmm.
And it's in Malcesine. You see the Venetian captain's villa behind you, because Malcesine is in the Veneto region.
Oh, where Venice is.
That's right. And you have a Scaligeri castle just to the left of it. And this boat is used for aperitivi, weddings, any excuse to go out and look at these amazing surroundings.
And does this boat also, does it do sort of sunset cruises that that people can go on?
Easily. Loads of sunset cruises. You find families getting on board. You find groups of girlfriends, couples, people finishing work, somebody's birthday. Let's go.
Monte Baldo. Is that like Bald Mountain?
No, Baldo's the name. It's nothing to do with bald. Bald would be calvo in Italian, would be calvo. But it's nicknamed the botanical garden of Europe. And you can take a cable car from Malcesine up to the top. And you know, it's got a restaurant, it's a ski station in the winter, but it also has a lodge, a rifugio, as we call it, a lodge, which was an old army barracks, Italian army barracks from the First World War. And there were soldiers based here because we were close to the Austrian border. And that little lodge now prepares food. And I think you can sleep there if the weather suddenly changes. But it's a beautiful place, and it's 6,000 feet. So when it's hot, it's a good place to be. This is Sirmione. And Sirmione is at the southern end of the lake, so close to the highway that goes to Milan and to Venice. And many Rick Steves tour leaders like to stop here for lunch on the Best of Italy tour. We have another Scaligeri castle. There's 4 or 5 of these castles all around the lake. Scaligeri, these were the rulers of Verona in the Middle Ages. But it's nice. Inside the walls, you've got gelato. And this is where you have the Grotto di Catullo as well. So you've got an archaeological site. You've got the castle you can visit. You can take a boat around the peninsula where you can see the thermal water, the sulfur water bubbling into the lake. And you can have a swim now.
Well, started at the very north point of the lake, Riva del Garda, where you live, and finished at that southern point. And it's amazing to me, Patricia, that all of those sites from those photos that you just showed us are all located on one lake. I feel like you could spend a week just going around Lake Garda and appreciating everything. It's an amazing place you've chosen to live.
Easily, Gabe. You could spend a week here, and at the same time, you could, if you want to see a bit more, Verona is 1 hour away. If you want to go to Trento, where we had the longest board meeting in history, where the Catholic Church decided to meet to decide what to do about the Protestants, that's 45 minutes. Mantova is 1 hour away. Italy's Sleeping Beauty. So it really is a place you could spend a bit of time.
Well, thank you for giving us that taste of your home lake. And before we move on to the Dolomites, I'd love for you to take a few quick minutes to give us an overview of a few of the other lakes that people could visit in the Italian Lakes District. And let's start with the third of the 3 big lakes, Lake Maggiore.
This is the Trenino. Trenino means little train. And this is one of my favorite excursions, is to leave Stresa on Lake Maggiore in the morning, take the ferry, into Switzerland, because Maggiore is in both Italy and Switzerland, and then come off, spend a few hours in Locarno, and take the train. This little train goes through the 100 valleys. And it goes up and down through the valleys and eventually brings you back into Italy at Domodossola, and then back into Italy. And I think back to Stresa, the price is about 50 euros for the whole day, but everything must be reserved. And you need to have your passport with you because you're going from Italy to Switzerland and back into Italy. Isola Bella. Now, Isola Bella is probably the loveliest island. And these islands were bought by a family called Borromeo, famous Italian family. They're still quite in the news quite often today. They even had a saint in the family. He tried to have music band in the church, Carlo Borromeo. But this island is Isola Bella. One of the founder's wife was called Isabella. So beautiful island, Isabella. And it's a beautiful Italian garden with flowers and plants and marbles. It's amazing. And decorations like this in the garden. It's mind-blowing. And the three islands are close together. Just look at the gardens. Then you have Isola Madre, which is the other island, which has an English-style garden too. And then you have Isola Pescatori, which is where you would go for lunch. And the three are connected, easy, accessible from Stresa. You can take a private ferry or the public ferries, which Colleen was talking about. You know, you have the same in Maggiore. Easy, all easy to do to spend a nice day.
Oh, that's like beautiful. And then I understand that there are a few smaller lakes that people can also try to access if they have some more time on their hands. Lago di Carezza looks gorgeous.
This is my favorite. It's my favorite lake probably in the whole of Italy. It's a tiny lake, but sometimes there's nothing there. And the legend tells us that the dwarf smashed a rainbow in here. But you'll need to come to Italy to see it before I can tell you the whole legend.
Oh, well, I definitely want to hear about a smashed rainbow. So that's a very good incentive.
It's in the Dolomites. This is Bryce. This isn't the best photo of Bryce, but we have another one. I think you have one coming afterwards. And there it is. This is Ron and Lynn Pisano, and they're at Lake Bryce in the Dolomites. Now, Bryce does tend to get busy, so you need to reserve your parking. The parking's out of town. But, you know, many of these places are great to visit even in late fall or I'd say early spring. Then I would take a car. But Bryce is in the Dolomites. So I think Lake Carezza, Lake Bryce, and Lake Horta. These are some amazing small lakes. Passo Resia, we're going almost to the Swiss border in the South Tyrol. And this is one of the towns after the Italianization of this area. Mussolini wanted everything south of the Bernard Pass. And of course, he started to construct hydroelectric stations, and this whole town, the valley was flooded, and sadly the residents lost their homes and most of the villages underneath the lake.
Quite haunting. I wonder if are there any people that want to go scuba dive in the underwater town?
Yes, there are, but I can't imagine it didn't contribute to the feelings between the Italians and the German-speaking South Tyroleans. When this area was Italianized, it was very difficult. And it was situations like this which added to the hostilities between the two communities.
All right. Well, Patricia, thank you so much for that quick whirl around the Italian lakes. So much to see there. But now we are going to go from the lakes up into the mountains. And I'd actually like to kick things off with Rick in the town of Kastelruth, where we stay on tour in our My Way Alpine Europe tour. Rick is actually going to show us around the hotel in the morning, as they're getting ready for a day of touring. So let's get started. Let's start our time in the Dolomites off with Rick getting ready for a day of adventure.
Buongiorno, I'm Rick Steves. I'm saying buongiorno because I'm in Italy in the Alps. And just starting a beautiful day on our Alps tour. Down there you can see our two of us. And Hilda, the bus driver's down there. But we're in the Italian Alps. And this is just a beautiful German, Italian, because this is where the German-speaking part of Italy is. But this is just a delightful hotel. I love the characteristic paintings, and you got buongiorno, Trish.
Buongiorno, come stai?
We're good. So this is his group, Rick Steves. But I like this because
the trail of the witches.
Hey, you guys, 15 minutes and we're going to be on the bus. Buongiorno. Anna, thank you for a beautiful hotel. And then one thing great about a hotel selection is the location. And I really like to step out the door and to be on a beautiful square. You can hear the fountain trickling down, reminding you there's nice fresh water right out of the Alps. And here we are in the Dolomites. This is the delightful town of Kastelruth. And today we're driving from the Italian Alps through the Austrian Alps to the top of the Zugspitze, where we can straddle the border of Germany and Austria, tallest point in Germany, and we'll finish off in Bavaria. Happy travels.
All right, Patricia, before we get to our hiking in the Alps, I want to do another quick at a glance with some fast facts about the Dolomites. So for the Dolomites, I would imagine, as with many mountainous areas, there's probably a skiing season and a hiking season. What do you feel is the best time to go to the Dolomites?
I think May to November is the best time really for hiking. February, March can be risky. Usually February is ski season. March can be the snow is starting to melt. So it can be muddy. But I'm hoping to hike next week. So we're a few weeks' time. So we're getting close to November. It's still good enough to hike.
And in terms of transportation, you told me that the Dolomites is actually pretty well connected to a couple different parts of the country for people wanting to make a quick trip there.
Yeah, Dolomites is connected with the high-speed train, the Freccia. Freccia means arrow, or Italo Treno, which is another high-speed train. It's a private company. And from Rome to Bolzano, I think it takes just over 4 hours, maybe over 4 hours. And you can step off in the center of Bolzano. You can walk then to a nice hotel. From Bolzano, you can take a cable car to the Renon Plateau, which we talk about in the Rick Steves book. You could, once you've got off in the gondola goes over the orchards where my apple juice comes from, my gourmet apple juice. And then you could either hike or you can take a train. It's all easy to do. There's castles to visit if you need some art with frescoes. So if you want to go to Compach and Kastelruth, you would, from Bolzano, take a bus, which would take you to Kastelruth or to Ortisei. It's all very well connected.
And so you can access good hikes without having to have a car.
Yeah, you can access good hikes as long as you stay somewhere like Bolzano or Compach or Ortisei. Easily done.
And do you feel like somebody could entertain themselves for up to a week in the Dolomites if they wanted to just do a mountain portion of their vacation?
Easy. And if they need a bit of city life, they can go to Merano on the train. You can even go to Bressanone. If you need the bigger centers, Bolzano is also home to the Iceman, Otzi, 5,000 years old. There's something for everybody.
Well, we are going to now that we've gotten ready for our day with Rick, gotten our fast facts, let's ascend up into the Dolomites and enjoy some clear mountain air.
We're on our way to Italy's dramatic limestone rooftop. The Dolomites, with their distinct and jagged peaks, offer some of the best alpine thrills in Europe. And these mighty mountains seem to protect the traditional culture in the region's villages and bucolic farmsteads. Historically, the Tyrol was its own state. Today, that region is divided, part in Austria and part in Italy. The Italian part is called South Tyrol. The region is a mix of the two cultures and officially bilingual. While the traditional economy is farming, today tourism is also big. Skiing in winter, hiking in summer. The Great Dolomite Road, beautifully engineered, leads to the nearly 7,000-foot-high Sella Pass. It's great for a joyride, and famously a big challenge for bikers. Making it to the summit is always a good excuse for a triumphant group photo. These bold limestone pillars offer something for everybody. This is rock climbing country, thrilling, even for spectators.
Patricia, is that you every weekend? Do you quick zip to the Dolomites and just scale a mountain?
Sure, after they sedate me.
Actually, though, how long does it take for you to get to the Dolomites from where you live along Lake Garda? Is that something that people would do as a day trip or a weekend trip?
The Varenna Dolomites actually start about 13 minutes from here, but to get to where Rick is, a compact about 1 hour, 30 minutes, 1 hour and 45 minutes takes me. And you also have the Via Ferrati, which are war routes, you know, the climbs in the Dolomites. We have some of them here around Garda area, but compact, 1 hour and a half, I can be up in the sides around.
Okay, wow. So yeah, that's could easily be a day trip from where you live then. Excellent. Well, let's continue to explore some slightly less vertical parts of the Dolomites.
From the town of Ortisei, we're catching the Seceda lift. All over this region, the lifts do the climbing fast and easy, depositing hikers sweat-free at thin-air trailheads. I love walking on a ridge. And with as many nationalities enjoying this scene as there are flowers in the fields, the blissful world up here is one of pristine nature and happy hikers. These slopes are busy with skiers in the winter. When planning, be aware that in early spring and late fall, that's between seasons here in the Dolomites, many lifts, huts, and restaurants are shut down, and trails can be covered in snow. We're here in summer, and everything's wide open. Everywhere I look feels like an alpine adventure awaiting my arrival.
Patricia, now if you're like me and you have a lot of friends that enjoy skiing, but you yourself are not a skier, I'm wondering, do the Dolomites have some nice ski lodges where someone like myself could just sit inside and read a book and have a warm beverage?
There are many places, and some of these towns, they have like Ortisei, where Rick does a bit of filming. They have outdoor swimming pools, heated pools.
Oh.
There's great après-ski. There's great walking as well. And even if you're not a skier, in March, there's many paths beside the slopes where you can actually walk in the sunshine. So you don't really need to be a skier, but it helps if you are.
That is good to know. A nice heated pool sounds great to me. So I'll file that away.
One thing I love about Europe, I've been coming here all my life, and there's still places to discover. The town of Kastelruth feels like an alpine village rather than a ski resort. That's why I feature it in my Italy guidebook as the ideal home base for exploring the Dolomites. The hyperactive bell tower seems to ring out the wisdom of honoring local traditions. Buildings are painted with murals celebrating the town's rich heritage. Clearly, fire has long been a concern. St. Florian, the patron of firefighters, is shown all over town putting out fires. The town cemetery is like a lovingly tended garden. Entire families share a common plot. Cobbled lanes lead past friendly shops to the welcoming town square. And for generations, the fountain, with its metal cup, has invited all for a refreshing drink. The fountain also watered horses back when coaching inns lined the square. Here in the region of South Tyrol, even though we're in Italy, locals speak German first and Italian second. That's because for centuries it was in the Austrian Habsburg realm, ruled from Vienna. After World War I, South Tyrol ended up as part of Italy. Mussolini did what he could to Italianize the region. He even gave each city a new Italian name. This town, Kastelruth, became Kastelroto. But the region's Germanic heritage endures. You can see it in its prosperity and in its lively folk culture. Amateur folk bands have fun keeping that heritage alive. The instruments are traditional, as are the costumes. The blue aprons come from a time when humble workers needed to protect their precious clothing. It's nice to think that these boys are both modern and traditional, and their traditions are clearly surviving into the next generation.
Patricia, how does it, I guess, are Italians very intentional about keeping their folk traditions alive? And is the government invested in helping the different regions keep their folk traditions alive?
I think it's really, it's a regional thing, you know. In each community, they try to keep their traditions going. But in the South Tyrol, it's a little bit different because of course, there were hostilities between the Italians and the Germans when this area was Italianized. But there's one community we don't often talk about in the South Tyrol, and that is the Ladini, Ladini. And these people have preserved their traditions for 2,000 years. They didn't go to the EU, they didn't complain, they didn't plant bombs. They just practiced them. And they are descendants of the Rahiti Romansh. There's 25,000 of them living in the Dolomitan regions of Europe today. It's an old language, a bit of Latin, Provençal, Portuguese, Yiddish, everything in there. And they still speak it. Or to say, where Rick is going to go, I have some friends from there. It is their mother tongue. Gabe is their mother tongue. In Gardena Valley and the Alto Badia. So they just practiced their traditions without shouting too loud.
Is that any, I know that in Switzerland, there's 4 official languages. There's French, German, Italian, and Romansh. Does it have any relation to that?
Yes, it's related to the Romansh language. So the Alpine tribes people, you know, the people who were eventually conquered by the Romans when the Romans built the great Dolomitan roads and the roads through the Dolomites.
Fascinating.
They're still around there 5% today in Alto Adige in the South Tyrol, 5% of the population.
Wow. Well, it's fascinating to see, even just within northern Italy, how much diversity there is between the different cultures. And we'll enjoy a final few moments of this traditional folk band.
Wonderful.
Kastelruth is the gateway to Europe's largest alpine meadow, the Alpi di Susi. As automobiles are generally not allowed, visitors approach by cable car. Landing at Kompach, the commercial hub of the meadow, hikers can hop a lift or a shuttle bus to the trailhead of their choice. The Alpi di Susi is a natural preserve at the foot of the mighty Sasso Lungo and Sasso Piatto peaks. The meadow is 3 miles wide by 7 miles long and seems to float at 6,000 feet above sea level. It's dotted by farm huts and wildflowers, surrounded by dramatic Dolomite peaks, and crisscrossed by meadow trails, ideal for equestrians, flower lovers, and walkers. It's also just right for someone needing a lazy beer with a spectacular view. And completing this storybook Dolomite setting, the spooky Mount Schlern, home of mythical witches, looks boldly into the haze of the Italian peninsula.
Patricia, I know that you said when biking in the Lakes District, there's options for people of all abilities. Is that also true when hiking in the Dolomites? Whether you're somebody who just wants a gentle stroll or a more tactical ascent, can everybody find what they're looking for in the Dolomites?
Yes, there's something for everyone. I love the Hans and Paula Steiger Trail from Kompach. It's easy to do. It stops at a few old farmhouses like the Malgarich, and it eventually ends at a lodge where you can have a nice lunch. If you feel like walking back through the forest and it's all well indicated, signed, you can take the bus back, or you can either, there's one bus connects through the region, or else you can walk back. And that's fairly easy. There's places to sit, to stop, to rest, to eat, to drink. It's fine. But there are more difficult things. The Schlern, which Rick is talking about, is a more difficult trail. Probably take you about 6 hours.
Well, for anybody interested, I just reposted in the chat widget Patricia's favorite hike. If you have any questions for Patricia, we'll get to those in just a moment. If you could put those in the Q&A widget. But first, Patricia, you put together just a few more photos for us that you took in the Dolomites. So before we get to questions, I would love for you to share those final few photos with us.
Yeah, this is one of my tour parties from the Best of Italy several years ago, and we were hiking in the Alpi di Susi. I think we hiked all the way to Ortisei that day, and then the coach picked us up. We took the gondola into Ortisei, and we came back round to Kastelruth.
And Patricia, does everybody hike on that tour, or is there free time where people can hike if they want to, or do other things if they'd like?
Most people go hiking. Some people decide to do more difficult things. They're a bit more adventurous. And some would like to see a bit of wood carving, a bit of hiking, some good food. So that's the sort of day it is, you know. You can make it as easy. And then some people decide they've had enough, make their way back, and others just keep going. Oh, this is the Sasso Lungo. It's called the Long Stone. The Sasso Lungo, 5 fingers and the flat stone. And it's the entrance to it's between the Sella Pass and the Val Gardena. Beautiful. And here is the Juliette Schlern, which Rick, of course, has just talked about. This is a difficult hike. Take you about 6 hours, and you have to have a good level of fitness to do this one.
It does look quite imposing.
It is. You'll find the wood everywhere in the South Tyrol, and South Tyroleans are very religious. You know, there's Saint Christopher, Saint Florian, and Christ on the cross. You know, the wood carvings was something that the farmers did in the winter months when these people were mainly farmers. Now many of the farmers have hotels. This is a cafe life in Bolzano. We have the Duomo just to the right, and you can see the statue of Walter von der Vogelweide. We call it Walter Square.
I remember I remember, Patricia, when I was assisting on one of our family tours, it stopped in Bolzano just for a few hours. And I loved the kind of colorful tiles or shingles on the roof of the cathedral. It's just beautiful.
It is. It's an amazing town because it is sort of that crossroads between Italy and Austria. And you see people tend to sit in the plazas, taking the sun, wearing their shades, drinking Aperol Spritzer, cappuccino, sacca torta. It has that mix of Italy and Austria, the best of both. And the area gets 300 sunny days a year. So it's surrounded by orchards, vineyards, and all the fruit and veg is brought in here in flowers and sold at this wonderful herb market, and chestnuts. It's just lovely. And you also have great architecture, like in this photograph, you can see the rest of the Torgel house, which is gorgeous inside. It's an inexpensive pizzeria with all lovely wooden beams and frescoes. So Bolzano has a nice atmosphere. There's old bars around this area. People come out at night from work or lunch and they have a glass of apple juice. And I'm not drinking whiskey. This is me biking with a good friend of mine who is a very experienced bike guide in the Dolomites in Garda. Now, this was a difficult bike ride. It went over a lot of rocks, but this is something this lady does. She can make it as easy or as difficult as someone wants it to be. And we're above Lake Garda here.
Well, Patricia, thank you so much for sharing those photos with us. It actually segues well into my word from the sponsor this week. So our sponsor this week is the Rick Steves Europe Tour Scrapbook Competition. So there are a lot of fun things that we do at Rick Steves Europe that not necessarily everyone is aware of. And this week wanted to let you know that we have an annual scrapbook competition that any tour members from that year can enter. So if you've ever wondered, if you've not been on a Rick Steves Europe tour and you've wondered what it looks like through the eyes of a tour member, I've put a link in the resources in the chat where you can look at past submissions from tour members that have put together a virtual scrapbook of their tour. And if you did go on a Rick Steves Europe tour in 2022, we actually just opened up submissions for this year's scrapbook competition. So there is a link there where you can read all about it. You can contribute your own scrapbook and potentially even win a Rick Steves Europe tour. So this week's show brought to you by the Rick Steves Europe Tour Scrapbook Competition. Now, Patricia, Ben has been sending me some great questions from our viewers. And I'd like to start with a question from Christina. Christina's wondering, in the Lake District and the Dolomites, are there many kind of artisans or artisan goods that people can buy?
Christina, it's a lot of wood carvings. If you're interested in wood carvings, yes, there are. There are a lot of locally made products, also from silver and from metals, from the iron, the things you saw in the fountain in the videos, because these are crafts that go back hundreds of years in the South Tyrol. That was where their industry came from 600-700 years ago. So you will find this, yes. You can find wood carvers, people who work with the steel, the iron, making beautiful picture frames, lots of lovely textiles as well, cushions, covers, lampshades, beautiful, beautiful handcrafts. Yes, there is many.
Joanne is wondering, Patricia, are there people that do hut-to-hut hiking in the Dolomites, or do most people just kind of do day hikes and come back to a kind of home base?
You can do hut-to-hut in the Dolomites. There's the Alta Via #1. If you look this up, it needs to be reserved, I'd say at least a year in advance. And they do hut-to-hut, the Alta Via #1. And that's hiking hut-to-hut.
Mm.
And it's beautiful.
I believe I've heard of the Alta Via before. Yeah, it's an intense trail.
It's not too bad. It's not too bad.
No?
you're really not covering that much ground every day. But another good option is to unpack in the Alpi di Susi and do various trails that day. You could easily do 3 or 4 days there in the Alpi di Susi. The advantage is you unpack for 3-4 nights. But the Alta Via is spectacular, but it is getting very busy.
We had a few people, Patricia, that were asking about home bases. Where would be, if you had to kind of pick one town or city to have as your home base in the Lakes District and one to have as your home base in the Dolomites, which towns or cities would you choose?
Right. If I was going to stay and visit some cities and some hiking, I would probably choose Bolzano or Bressanone. But because Bolzano, the nice thing about Bolzano is you can get to Merano. From Merano, you can take the train to Males and you can get your bike. You have to rent it and you can do 3 hours from Males through to Glorens, back down to Merano and leave your bicycle. Another day, you can take the gondola up to the Renon Plateau. Another day, you can take a bus to Kastelruth and up to Compatch. So I think Bolzano, it's a city though, it allows you to go in all directions. You can go to the Castelroncolo and see some beautiful frescoes if you would like a day off. You know, you can sit in the nice bars, do the market, and you can go see the Iceman, Otzi. He's 5,000 years old. So Bolzano is a great base. You can even do some bike rides. You could go to Lago di Carezza too one day. You could hike around the lake, Carezza Lake. It's a great 1 week stay to visit the whole area.
Yeah, you've just given us a whole consultation just in the past 2 minutes.
I'm sorry.
And in terms of a home base in the lakes?
Well, Riva del Garda is a great area because it's near a highway as well. We're maybe 30 minutes from a highway, but at the same time, we're close, but we're not too close. Malcesine is nice, but you don't want to be blocked by traffic. So you want to be able to get in and get out as well. Riva del Garda is a great base. It's got 15,000 inhabitants. I would avoid Easter. Easter week, stay away from here. Not unless they pay you, come here. Okay? But Riva del Garda is a good base. Malcesine is beautiful. The lakes can be nice out of season. You know, it depends what you're looking for. You get wonderful winter weather. You get good sunny days. And as the Germans say, there's no such thing as bad weather. There's just people with the wrong clothing.
Exactly. I think Rick likes to parrot that as well. And it is excellent advice. Speaking of the lakes, Jenny was actually wondering, are all of the lakes naturally occurring, or are any of them kind of the result of damming up rivers?
Well, the little one you saw, the Resia, that is not natural. But Garda is natural. It's the last ice age. Como, Orta, these are all natural. You have to go towards Rome, where you get Lake Corbara in Umbria, and then you get Trasimeno. Trasimeno, I think, is natural, but Corbara is not. So you have to go further towards Umbria and Tuscany. But yeah, these are natural lakes up here. These are all Garda's coming from the Dolomites.
And Kim wants to know, what on average is the water temperature? Are they swimmable?
My neighbor upstairs, who's asleep at the moment, Kim, she swims every morning. She's been swimming since April this year. Now, I would go in April. And I know there were people swimming in there yesterday. Now, it depends where you live. We have the children who come from Finland. They sail and they come here in March, and the little Finns and the Scandinavian kids are jumping in this lake because probably it's warm to them. But the Italians won't swim here until June. June, July, and August.
I'm not much for the cold water, so I'll wait till August.
No. You're more a Dolomite heated swimming pool.
Exactly. Get me to one of those heated swimming pools any day. So Patricia, one final question that I like to ask our tour guides is, I'm sure that there are many, but what is just one of your all-time favorite memories or experiences that you've had on a Rick Steves Europe tour?
I think one of my favorites is from the photograph I've showed. It was just a wonderful day. We went out hiking. We went from Compatch, and we started off saying we were going to hike out a site. We were going to hike, to one of the huts. And when we got to that hut, we went to the next one, and eventually we came down into Orteside, this photograph. And I think by the time we'd finished, we must have done about 25,000 steps or 30,000 steps. We just kept going day after day. And it was nice because we stopped at a wood carver's place. There was a elderly gentleman, and he had been wood carving all his life, and he showed us some of his wood carvings. We stopped to the Marguerite. We had hot chocolate, and we stopped at Sony. We didn't go to Rauch that day. We stopped at Sony, which is up on top before you take the gondola into Orteside, and we had lunch and then visited Orteside. So these are just that's, I'd say, one of my favorite moments.
And do you have any more tours for the year? I know you said you just finished one up yesterday.
I do. I have a Village Italy coming up this weekend, and we finish on Lake Orta.
There you go. Finishing in the lakes. Well, Patricia, thank you so much for taking time out of the middle of your night for us, taking time out of the middle of a busy touring season. I personally have learned so much. I saw many comments from our viewers joining us tonight that they learned a lot as well and are extremely grateful for you taking out the time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Gabe. I hope I haven't been over enthusiastic, but thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure. And I never thought I would enjoy so much drinking wine and apple juice at 5 a.m. But here,
well, I'm hoping for your sake it doesn't become too much of a habit, but I'm glad that you enjoyed it for one night.
I'll stick to the strudel.
Perfect. Well, a good breakfast. Thank you again, Patricia.
Buonanotte.
And thank you to all of you for joining us tonight. We appreciate it, and we hope to see you next week. Again, next week, we will be joined with Ilva and Gabriella, a mother and her daughter that guide for us. They guide our Scandinavia tour, and they're going to take us for a little virtual tour around their hometown of Stockholm, one of my favorite places in Europe. And then the week after that, Rick will be back, and he'll be joined by his friend Jean Openshaw, and they will talk about the art of the Renaissance. So go to ricksteves.com, make sure that you are signed up and ready to join us for those. And thank you once more to all of you for joining us tonight. And we hope you have a good evening. Good night, Patricia.
Or buongiorno. Good morning. It's 5 a.m.
Good morning, Patricia. Hi. And good night, Ben.
Buonanotte.
Good night, Gabe. Good morning, Patricia.
Buongiorno.
All right. Good night, everybody.